Anders Fogh was second in command in the office and at one time was the acting U.S. attorney a few years ago. He said you won't be able to fill those gaps and rebuild that office overnight. He told me,
even without a new scandal, the U.S. Department of Justice is collapsing from within as some of the most senior law enforcement officials are walking away one after another. In recent weeks, a wave of federal prosecutors and FBI agents have resigned or openly threatened to step down. Nowhere is this breakdown more visible than in Minnesota. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota is described as operating under a severe staffing shortage to the point where it no longer has enough personnel to handle even basic criminal cases. Drug prosecutions, financial fraud cases, and routine federal crimes are being delayed or stalled altogether. Prosecutors who remain are carrying workloads far beyond their capacity while facing mounting ethical dilemmas, continue pursuing cases widely seen as politically motivated, or refuse and accept the risk to their careers. What has pushed frustration to a breaking point is the widening gap between Washington and realities on the ground. While Minnesota is nearing paralysis in law enforcement, the DOJ headquarters under Trump has remained silent. Alongside the staffing crisis are increasingly explicit accusations that the DOJ under Trump has been politicized and weaponized. Cases involving the press and public figures have ignited fierce backlash within the legal community. The case of Don Lemon has become emblematic. Instead of being summoned through standard procedures for a cooperative individual with a known residence, he was arrested at 11 p.m., handcuffed, and held overnight. According to former prosecutors, such treatment is virtually unheard of for someone with a fixed address and no risk of flight. Equally shocking is the case involving Georgia Ford, an award-winning journalist who reported being surveilled by DEA agents outside her home. In that climate of fear, she admitted she believed she could be kidnapped and did not trust that those following her had proper legal authorization. For journalists, this was not an isolated incident, but a warning sign that the boundary between law enforcement and intimidation of the press is being erased under the Trump administration. But the paralysis inside the DOJ does not stop at staffing. It quickly escalates into a more serious issue: how the Trump administration is handling and closing the most sensitive cases on its books. In recent weeks, the Trump administration has repeatedly claimed that the Epstein Files have been fully reviewed and that nothing further remains to be released. Official statements say roughly 3 million documents have been made public, yet independent sources, lawmakers, and legal experts point to a starkly different reality. An estimated 20 to 50 million pages remain withheld. The enormous gap between what has been released and what remains sealed makes it difficult to view the administration's explanation as a mere procedural matter. It increasingly resembles a deliberate political choice. Once again, Todd Blanch stands at the center of the controversy. As Deputy Attorney General, he personally declared that the review of the Epstein Files was complete. According to his statement, the DOJ examined more than 6 million documents, thousands of videos, and tens of thousands of images, thereby fulfilling its legal obligations. For many veteran attorneys, however, this claim is not reassuring but deeply troubling. The same official who has remained silent amid resignations and institutional paralysis is now rushing to close one of the most sensitive cases in U.S. judicial history under an administration already accused of widespread political interference. The contrast becomes even sharper when viewed internationally. In some countries, the mere appearance of a name in partially released Epstein documents has forced political figures to resign. In the U.S., that has not happened. happened. No senior official has taken political responsibility, and questions about the involvement of powerful figures have been swiftly brushed aside. The message from the Trump administration is one of near total immunity for those at the top. Suspicion deepens further as the DOJ becomes entangled in controversies involving money and power. One of the most explosive cases involves a $500 million investment by an Abu Dhabi royal into World Liberty Financial, a company closely tied to the Trump family. According to disclosed documents, the investment amounts to 49% ownership. Of that sum, $187 million flowed directly to Trump family-linked entities, and $31 million to entities tied to the Wyckoff family. Notably, at the time of the investment, the company had virtually no concrete products, apart from having raised $82 million through the WLFI token. The timing of the deal has raised unavoidable questions. Shortly after the investment, the United Arab Emirates gained access to highly sensitive U.S. semiconductor chips, an area considered among the most critical to national security. While no document explicitly records a quid pro quo arrangement, the coincidence in timing and the scale of the money flow make such suspicions difficult to dismiss, especially when the Trump administration controls both the executive branch and the DOJ. When confronted, the response from the DOJ and Todd Blanch was not transparency, but political counterattack. Blanch argued that the criticism was unfair and suggested that previous administrations had done similar things. To independent observers, this reads less like an explanation and more like an evasion. Rather than refuting the allegations with concrete evidence, the DOJ under Trump has chosen to deflect with political comparisons. The consequences of this crisis are now becoming visible. The loss of personnel at the DOJ and FBI has prompted federal judges to openly criticize the agency for missed deadlines, procedural violations, and an inability to manage cases. In Minnesota, the impact is especially severe. Prosecutors no longer have the manpower to pursue major cases, from drug trafficking to financial fraud. The law enforcement vacuum under the Trump administration is no longer abstract. It is a direct risk to public safety. Ultimately, the issue is no longer just whether the Epstein Files conceal damaging information or whether the $500 million investment violated the law. The deeper systemic question is whether the U.S. Department of Justice under Trump still functions as an independent institution, or whether it has been transformed into a tool of political power when law enforcement officials leave because they no longer believe in the system. That is the most serious warning sign for any democracy. The wave of resignations, therefore, is not chaos, but a clear political message. A message that for many prosecutors and agents, staying on means accepting a reality they can no longer defend before their professional conscience. And as that message grows louder, silence from leadership ceases to be neutral. It becomes a political choice with long-term consequences.